Hello, lovelies. Welcome to the Fat Joy podcast, where we talk each week about how to flourish in an anti-fat world. I'm Sophia Apostol, a fat professional coach who loves talking to other fat people about what it's like to live within oppressive systems that marginalize our bodies, and how we still dare to have the audacity and courage to reach towards our collective liberation and embrace our joy. Please know this is an adult content podcast, so there will be swears, we will be talking about harms we've experienced, and we will be rebelling against weight stigma, diet culture, fat phobia, ableism, racism, etc. You can get more Fat Joy goodness, including how you can support the podcast, through my newsletter at fatjoy.substack.com. And for episode transcripts, book reviews, and show notes, head to the Fat Joy website at fatjoy.life. I am so glad you're here. Enjoy this episode. Hello, lovelies. Welcome back to the Fat Joy podcast. I'm Sophia, and I have Jeanette Thompson-Wessen here with me today. Hi, Jeanette.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm very excited. I found out about you, as I find out about everyone, through the socials, through Instagram, where you are the mindset nutritionist. And I would like, your content is so great, so informative. And then I think I had reached out to you and it was like, oh yeah, let's connect. Let's get you on the podcast. And then I think the week later, I was listening to Dr. Asher Larmy's podcast about, they did a 3-part series on the American Academy of Pediatrics horrific guidelines. And you were on one of the episodes. I was like, oh, I had one of those like, my worlds are colliding moment. And it was so neat.
Yeah, me and Ash both talk a lot. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm very, very lucky to have a very wonderful community in the anti-diet space. I've made such amazing friends. I'm sure you've experienced that as well in the community. It's so lovely.
It is. I was going to say one of the best parts of doing this that I don't think I had quite anticipated would be such a beautiful benefit is the creation of fat community, which I've never had before.
No, I didn't have it before being on social media, even in the way that I have been. And it's just been so lovely and sharing your experiences. You just don't feel as alone. And that's what I really like about what I do on my Instagram account, is to kind of, when something comes up in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to share that because I know I'm not going to be alone in these thoughts as well. And I think that's really important, like for everybody. We need that fat community.
We do. Well, I think all the time about how, systemic oppressions, all the varieties of them, which there are way too many, but the plethora of oppressions are designed to keep us separate and alone and othered, and also othering ourselves because we think, and then feeling shame about it, which keeps us more othered. And it's like we're just floating around alone, thinking we're the only ones that feels this way, and
it feels so stuck and lonely, and it's a really horrible place to be in. I think if I could scoop every single fat person up and put them into like a fat container and be like, we can look after each other, it's fine. Like, us fat people can teach each other stuff like fat vanity and how to actually enjoy your body, and come here. I want to love you all.
Well, the feeling amongst me and my friends is that no one's going to have any money for retirement, so we're planning on a commune. So perhaps it should be a fat-friendly commune.
But you say that. This was a conversation that I've had with Asher a few times, and it was before they actually moved up to Scotland. And they did actually end up moving to Scotland and was like, right, I'm ready. I'm starting the commune. Like, come on. I'm here already. I'm waiting for you all.
Oh, people are going to start showing up.
I know.
Here I come, Asher. I'm coming with my suitcase. Yeah, it's so true. It is so beautiful. And then we get to talk and get to know each other and share that with everyone who's listening too. So they get to be, all of you who are listening get to be part of this fat community. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It is, really.
Yeah. So, Jeanette, do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Who are you?
Who am I? I feel like a very complicated human being right now. Very complicated. So I'm Jeanette. I am a nutritionist. I always knew I wanted to do something with food when I was younger. I always wanted to be a chef. And then I did work experience and realized that I really didn't want to be a chef because I'm very much a people person. I like chatting to people and like being around people, and it felt very solitary. So I actually wanted to become a dietitian. And interestingly, I did great with my first bit of schooling, last bit of schooling, completely flunked it, did a really bad job. So I had to become a nutritionist rather than a dietitian because I could get into university with my grades, which was fine because then I did still had a pathway because I could still do my master's after that. But when I got to the end of my nutrition degree, interestingly, I filled out a teaching application form as well as the master's application form for dietetics. And one of the big reasons why I didn't actually apply for dietetics in the end was because I can't do it just yet because I'm not in a small enough body. Yeah. So when I get there eventually, when I've lost enough weight, and when I look a certain way, maybe I've worked out my style and I can, I really wanted to perform to body ideals and beauty ideals and, everything that you see from quite, big names in like nutrition and dietetics and stuff. And I was like, when I've worked that all out, I can come back to it. But for now, I'll go and do the teaching until I've worked that all out, until I can lose the weight and kind of keep it off. So I went and did teaching. So I taught secondary school kids how to cook, nutrition, eating, and loads of different things. And then I ended up basically on this kind of massive, huge, like body positivity journey, which just developed into fat liberation and learn about intuitive eating and putting that into like my own personal journey. And yeah, it kind of everything flourished from then. But when you have this like light bulb moment, that was me. Light bulb moment. And everything just went from there. It was just so much better.
Wow. And was that light bulb moment, that was when body positivity became fat liberation, or was it just was it even like, oh, there's this thing called body positivity?
It was that. And also discovering health at every size. And I remember looking at, and I know we're very, I'm very against Lindo and everything that has happened with Lindo. But for them, and that's also a very interesting conversation, their work was very much a gateway into this space for me. And learning about weight science through their work and through their literature was a gateway, which I think at the time was a very big thing. Did you experience that as well?
I did, yeah. For me, it was Virgie Tovar and Jess Baker. Those two books, and then shortly after Shrill by Lindy West. Those books, especially Jess and Virgie's, were like, what? Like, this is a thing. I'd never in my wildest imaginings ever conceived that it was okay to be fat. Like, it blew, I think I came and went from those books like back and forth, because I would read a chapter and be like, no, this can't be true. And then, oh, hang on, let me read another chapter. It was very, very challenging because I was challenging my whole like world belief or what I'd been taught, what I knew. It was so uncomfortable, but it felt there was like a truth that I could feel also through my whole body, right? Yeah.
And that's exactly, I think I went kind of, my brain just went through the science. And it was exactly that, I felt it was uncomfortable because I had been dieting for a long time. I'd done all the, the really stereotypical things. Like I remember doing Slim Fast. We did Slimming World, which is very much like Weight Watchers. And I'd done calorie counting, tried so many different things. And even though I was and this is what I always come back to, even though I was a nutritionist, I always knew the things that I was doing was not good for my body. Scientifically, I knew that. I knew that replacing my meals with a Slim Fast drink wasn't honoring me. I could feel that in my body. I could feel that in the way that my brain was working. It made me feel utterly miserable. And scientifically, nutrition science-wise, I knew that even though they listed a whole load of like nutrition on the back of it, I could look at that and be like, that's still not going to be enough for me. You know, I'm not going to be thriving on this. But that anti-fatness that I had, where I was like, I'm a nutritionist, I have to be in a small body. Otherwise, no one's ever going to take me seriously, because I'm not in it. Like, why would you listen to a fat nutritionist? You know, that's what my brain was constantly doing all the time. Why would anyone listen to me? And no one's going to listen to me to take advice. You know, I couldn't go into all these different things because I was still waiting for that small body, and then reading the weight science and me going, what? Like, okay, these are things that I knew, but it was just so validated, like, and almost like this massive sigh of relief, but also that discomfort that was in there as well, of trying to challenge all of that, and then going through that as well, like heading towards fat liberation. I think one of the really big tricky things as well is trying to separate yourself from your health as well. And because I was very like, being a nutritionist, you know, that morality in regards to health was so intrinsically linked. You know, my undergraduate was all about, you know, people must be skinny, you must be, and at the time it was in the UK, they were doing a massive report, so there was this huge thing about everything that was going on with people being in big bodies, and oh my god, it's never ending, and we're going to end up 100% of us are going to be in large bodies, and everyone's going to be dying early, and all that kind of rubbish that we know now. And reading the evidence, we know it's very different what the evidence actually says. But having those two, like, for me, I think that was one of the big things as well, is kind of going, okay, so I know all of this about weight science. I understand this from the disease point of view and how I can challenge those, but then trying to remove and pull apart that health and morality, and that healthism, that, you know, health isn't an individual responsibility. And I think that was a big thing for me as well in my kind of fat liberation journey, being able to pull those apart. And I think that's a really hard thing for fat people.
Yeah, for fat people. And I also will say, like, non-fat people as well, because I think it's so interesting. This actually literally happened to me yesterday. I joined a group coaching program because I just want some extra training and learning on how to coach groups. And the topic of, you know, this kind of, we have to practice while we're learning, because it's a very applied program, which is why I wanted to do it. I had a whole conversation about systemic oppression with the facilitator or the leader before I even committed to joining. He seemed very aware. He is very aware. But I probably should have brought up diet culture specifically and anti-fatness, because the topic he suggested that when we're in practice mode, that we as a small group, a group of 7, use is wellness. And I immediately was like, oh, fuck, here we go. So I was like, all right, fat woman raising her fat arm to say, hold up. I said, I love the topic of wellness. I am here for it. Here's the thing. Part of what gets looped into wellness is diet culture. And that is represented by intentional weight loss and dieting and food-related conversations for weight loss and ableism and healthism. And I have a strong boundary. It's a no-go for me. And I could see everyone else, all the other coaches were like, oh God. And one of them really even said, I want to crawl under my chair right now. I'm like, right, I am introducing conflict. And so it was very interesting because this is the tension. It's I know all this stuff, just like I imagine other I think a lot about, because we get lots of training in one of the organizations I work with from like anti-racist educators, neurodivergent educators, where like they know all the things and they specifically go into rooms and talk to people who do not know all the things and who are often very close to all the things. And I really had like a lighter version, because I'm not an anti-oppression educator, but I had a lighter version of that. Like, these people I respect, these people who are my peers, like I had to sit in that tension of, okay, what's going to happen now? And I feel like when you're talking about this tension between, all right, I'm a fat nutritionist, is anyone take me seriously? I'm sitting in this room going, okay, I have to draw a boundary, because I do not want to spend these next months hearing about people's diets, because that is not how I want to spend. That's not how I want to pay. I'm paying a lot. I don't want to pay to spend my time doing that. And no one knew about diet culture. It didn't register for anyone. And then, so now they've got to do their own learning. I still have to figure out, or we still have to have a conversation whether that limit is going to be accepted or not. Because for a lot of them, it was like, well, isn't this a preference to not talk about that? I'm like, no, we don't know who in the room has an eating disorder or disordered eating. We don't know about invisible disabilities right now. We're on Zoom. I could be in a chair. You don't know, like a wheelchair. You don't know. Anyway, it was just like, like these tension points that show up for fat people. It's like ever present and surprising, right? It's the surprise of it. So that tension you described and where it held you back, I really felt when you said that, because me of, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago would have probably just dropped the group workshop and been like, I just can't, and never said anything. So how did you work through that tension? What happened?
It's, I think it was a lot to do with my own personal journey. Definitely finding that kind of fat community. And when I started my Instagram account up originally, it was very typical anti-diet nutritionist, because that's what I've been seeing on like Instagram of how to put myself out there and stuff. And it wasn't until I've been doing so much work on my own personal journey in regards to pulling apart that health and that morality and combating a hell of a lot of ableism in my mind, and a hell of a lot of healthism and nutrition, nutritionism and reductionist nutrition, really combating those in my brain, because those were all very normal in my mind up until that stage. And it's normal for all of us. It shouldn't be normal, but it's normal for all of us until we start doing that work. And it's all really uncomfortable work. And it took me a while, and it's all work that I'll, really all continue to do anyway, isn't it? But it wasn't until I started doing that, and then I started kind of thinking like, God, like, actually, when there was another nutritionist at the same time who started up at the same time as me. And the main difference between me and her was that she was in a straight size body.
Oh, and she was anti-diet?
Anti-diet.
But straight size. Got it.
Straight size. Opened up her clinic at a very similar time to me and was automatically doing so much better. It wasn't until actually, it was a really early conversation I had with Nicola Salmon, actually. And she was the one that pointed out to me, she was the one that said, fat business owners are always going to find it so much more difficult, and fat business owners are always going to have to work so much harder. And she said also in this space, in this, anti-diet space, which it likes to view itself as very inclusive and quite intersectional, and it kind of appears on the front as that, but when you start kind of peeling back those layers, there's a lot of people taking up a lot of space that have a lot of privilege, which I found quite tricky and quite difficult. And, I've tried to navigate that as best I can, but it's something that I still find very, very challenging. Not in the way that I want to change my body. I'm in my own personal space of I I really have a lot of fat vanity. Like, I had a boudoir like photo shoot the other week, and I am obsessed with these photos. Oh my God. She sent them to me, and I've got all of these amazing photos of my bum. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. The husband, like, my husband's like, I'll have one there and then there. And I was kind of like, I don't think I can do that to our visitors or anyone, or think of the children, you know. And he's just like, well, they see your bum anyway. Yeah, no. Do they really want to see it all the time on the wall? Like, how about my parents? But I'm still loving them. I love these photos, and so I'm in a place of like almost fat vanity, and I'm literally at this stage of, look at my body. Like, I know this is uncomfortable to you because I'm not part of beauty standards. I'm not the thin ideal. So yeah, look at me. And you probably will find me really hot because I am really hot, you know, kind of thing. So my own personal journey, I feel fine. I wouldn't change anything about myself. I know I have a lot of body privilege that comes with me being able to say that and do that as well. I'm a mid-fat, able-bodied, woman, cisgendered, you know. I have a whole load of privilege to be able to say that I've got to that space. It's much easier for me to get there than other people. But yeah, in regards to, because I went on a massive tangent there about I was totally distracted by pictures of my bum.
I know, I was just going to say, let's go back to the boudoir photo shoot.
I have to show you some photos, won't I?
We'll share them with all the listeners.
Oh, shit. Well, they're already on my Instagram grid.
How have I not seen them? Okay, I'm going to have to double check. This is where the Instagram algorithm pisses me off, because I'm like, show me the people I follow. Show me everything from the people I follow.
I'm totally feeling that right now. But yeah, so I wouldn't change anything about myself. But then what do I do with a business to try and make myself more successful? If I don't want to change myself, and I don't feel the need to change myself, and, you know, it's not that my body is wrong. My body's never wrong. It's never been wrong. It's society and the messaging that's there that's speaking to everyone else around, and it's not everyone else's fault. You know, people have their own anti-fat bias, and it's trying to work out ways to kind of get through that as much as possible. But maybe photos of my bum on my grid might be the way forward, you know?
I mean, that's a good marketing strategy. Well, it's so interesting because I think this is where I see a lot of fat business owners really targeting the niche of other fat people, you know, because there is, I mean, I remember working at a hiking and outdoor equipment store and feeling like, oh gosh, is this person not wanting me as a salesperson because I'm fat? And what on earth would I know about the latest in gear and, you know, the best pants to wear if you're doing a through hike of the Appalachian? You know, like, it was very, I was really aware of it in jobs that I had, that there were assumptions about what you had to look like to do this thing. Like, here's what your body must look like to be an outdoorsy person. And my body did not look like that. You know? Yeah, it's really unfortunate. It's really frustrating. And yeah, I wish we could solve it, but I think this is the problem.
Yeah, you're right. You know, heading towards kind of fat people working with fat people. And that's why I like a community like my boudoir photo shoot. She's a fat woman herself. And I love that. You know, I think I'm much more likely now to seek out other people who are also fat to be spending my money with, or, you know, much more likely, you know, the same as I'd rather be spending my money with someone who is Black, you know, neurodivergent, disabled. I'd much rather be spending my money there. And that's where I put my kind of thoughts and efforts into my spending now. I think that's another big thing that kind of changed along with my own fat liberation journey, because if we're not working on all of those intersections and challenging ourselves constantly with those, then we're not helping all fat people, because all fat people can cover every single intersection that there is. And we want to be lifting everybody up, including our most, not our most, our least privileged. So I think that it's kind of changed my spending habits. Not that I have much money to spend, but that's something we were going to talk about anyway.
Yes, it is. It is. Well, and I just wanted to give a shout out because Angel Austin, who I have interviewed on this podcast before, and actually I feel like Angel might have been episode 5. It was really early on when I started last fall. Angel has just released something called Fat Gig, and I'll include the link in the show notes. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's basically, hey, if you're looking for a job to be done, why don't you hire someone who's in a marginalized body? Because we know people, right? Yeah, because we know people in marginalized bodies get paid less, don't get hired, weight is not protected. You can get fired for being fat. Like there are so many barriers. So I've got to take a look. I've got a note to take a look on my to-do list for this week because I want to hire someone. I want to build out my website a little more. So I'm like, okay, well, why wouldn't I, if I'm going to go to like Upwork, why would I do that when I can go to Fat Gig and hire someone who is fat, probably has other intersectionalities, and I can put my money there and support the people I want to support.
Exactly. Much better to put our money that way.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So I'll link to Fat Gig. So everyone listening, you need stuff done, check out Fat Gig. So I feel like we already kind of addressed what is always my second question, which is what is your relationship to the word fat? I feel like we talked through that beautifully. So yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you, Jeanette, was that I think it was a question. I don't forget which of my socials it was on, but it was, or maybe it was a comment on a post, but basically this idea of intuitive, like the person, I poor planning. I should have pulled it up, but basically this person was saying, hey, I want to follow an intuitive eating lifestyle. I'm anti-diet. Like I really want to do things differently with my relationship to food. And I am on a very tight fixed income and cost of living is going up. Like how do I do that? And what I heard in that question is so clear. It's like, I think about this all the time where I'm like, I don't want to live in late stage capitalism, but I have a mortgage. And it's like this tension that exists between the reality of our situation and how we're also trying to often divest from the realities of oppression. So I was like, hey, Jeanette, you want to talk about this big, easy topic? And you said yes. So here we are. So where do we even start to pull the thread of that?
Well, I think a good place to start is that there's been research that shows that if you are deprived or you have been, in the past being stuck in kind of poverty for whatever reason, then you are much more likely to not be an intuitive eater yourself. They've done a lot of work in teenagers and trying to find that out as well. So teenagers especially, if they spend their teen years basically in food deserts, food insecurity, that kind of thing, then they're less likely to be like intuitive eaters on the intuitive eating scale. So that kind of makes everything sound really simple. So it makes it sound like it's completely inaccessible and it's a big no. And these are conversations I had quite early on as well in my kind of work with intuitive eating as a professional. It's very much like, okay, so how accessible is intuitive eating across the financial range? We know it's very easy financially for people who are wealthy, probably kind of in that middle area, but that kind of lower area, is it? And then when you think about, one of the principles is being able to give yourself unconditional permission to eat, which usually people, when they're first starting off their journey, it sounds like we're saying to people, just eat whatever you want, whenever you want, eat it all, just eat it all, eat it all, eat it all. And then that becomes quite daunting because how do you keep up with eating it all? And then that's when it becomes really, really inaccessible to people.
Hello, lovely. Sophia here, popping into this episode to let you know that I've been slowly and steadily creating workshops connected to Fat Joy. If that intrigues you, if you've been thinking that you'd like a safe space to explore the influence that diet culture and anti-fatness have had in your life, if you've been craving community support and empathy, if you'd like to learn more about these workshops, become a subscriber to my Fat Joy newsletter on Substack, because that's where I'm going to be sharing all the details about the workshops. You can head to fatjoy.substack.com to become a subscriber for free. And if you'd like to support me making the podcast so I can keep doing it, you can become a subscriber for $5 a month. Thank you.
And that was the question that I had for a while, that I sat with for a while, which was, maybe intuitive eating isn't actually accessible. Maybe it isn't. And the research says that it possibly isn't accessible as well for people who do experience that. So people who experience food insecurity, you psychologically have a very similar reaction to those food deserts and that food insecurity than what you do with dieting, because it's still deprivation from your diet. You're still not being able to allow yourself to have foods, because dieting, you're telling yourself, but when you don't have enough money, you just can't get food. It's not accessible to you, and you can't get the range of food or the frequency of food. So that's why you get your food insecurity. So you had very similar. That's why a lot of people who do experience food insecurity for whatever reason, especially in their childhood, they're at an increased risk of then developing disordered eating or eating disorders as they grow older as well. But then when I started thinking about that more, then I just thought, but are we just really boiling it down to make it seem very kind of simple, when this conversation is so much more vast? Then no, it's not accessible for people who don't have enough money. I believe it is accessible, but as long as we're thinking about it across the whole of your life. And this is what I find with intuitive eating. People will kind of do their intuitive eating journey and they think it's just all about their food and their relationship with their food. And actually it has so much of a profound impact on the whole of their life.
Yeah. And Jeanette, could you, just in case, just as a little refresher for people, do you mind just sharing basic principles of intuitive eating? Because I think that'll provide a really great context for where you're about to go.
Yeah. So intuitive eating, you have 10 principles. I'm probably not going to be able to reel them off the top of my head, but generally wise, it's rejecting diet mentality. It's honoring your hunger and your fullness. It's then moving on to doing, being able to give yourself unconditional permission to eat, which is really challenging, like fear foods and, not hiding foods or doing secret eating, the kind of trying to eat what you can. It's very loaded. It's quite a difficult one for a lot of people to do.
That was a hard one for me.
Yeah.
Chips. It took me probably 15 years to be able to just have chips in the house, and they just get to be in the house, because it was a secret and a fear food for me.
Oh yeah. And I think that's really, really common. And people think that intuitive eating can be done. I'm sorted. I've got my certificate for intuitive eating, and it's something that it's a tool that you have for life. Basically, you learn these ways of being able to kind of work through these foods, and as they come up as well, because foods still come up for me where I'm like, oh my God, I haven't had this in years, and I'll go through moments of being like, oh my God, I'm just going to eat this food, and it's using the same tools again to be able to become more intuitive when it comes to their food. So it is basically, intuitive eating is one big tool to be able to eat in a way that honors your body, that makes you feel, actually okay in your body, rather than not feeling okay, not feeling kind of and having a better relationship with your body and with your food, and movement comes into it as well. And so, yeah, so when we're talking about intuitive eating and the accessibility to intuitive eating, we have a much wider conversation in regards to, okay, so why are we doing intuitive eating in the first place? Like, what brings people into doing intuitive eating? And most of the time, people don't want to do dieting. People feel like they're dieting because of health reasons. I need to lose weight because of my health. I need to diet because of my health, as well as obviously how we look. But people try and reject that when they're doing the work behind rejecting diet and diet mentality, which you can do. That's financially free. There's loads of books that you can get for intuitive eating from secondhand shops. There's loads of information online that you can get as well. But then it's moving into the food side of things. So what do we do? And the thing that we do is I think it's an acceptance we sometimes have to have, and that's easier said than done. An acceptance of, okay, I might not be able to all the time commit to intuitive eating. There's going to be moments in my life that I'm not going to be able to be an intuitive eater. And it's something that I've spoken to really recently with my group coaching is like health stacking. I like to call it health stacking. And it's going, okay, so I'm in this moment of not being able to afford food right now. Fun foods I'd love to have, but I can't have them because they're not accessible. They're too expensive for me right now. Knowing that this is probably going to make things difficult for you later on because of your relationship with food is going to be changed. It's hard, it's horrible. But having acceptance and compassion because you're in a situation where you can't change that. Our socioeconomics are very, very difficult to change. So giving yourself that compassion, knowing that you can come back to feeding intuitive eating into your life. And it's not that you stop being an intuitive eater, like you're not stopping that, because this isn't a diet when we're doing intuitive eating. And I think that's what we think of, like, oh, I can't do it anymore. I can't afford the food, so I'm not intuitive eating anymore. Actually, no, you still are. You still can do that. It's just thinking of things in a different way. So to explain like health stacking, your health is so much more than just how you eat and how you move. It's
like 70% more.
Oh my gosh, so much more. And when you look into that, like when I first looked into that, I was like, I was really challenged. Because obviously being a nutritionist, I've been in this world of nutrition is so important, is
food as medicine. I was just reading about food as medicine today, which is like the newest movement.
Cures everything, that kind of thing. And to be challenged with that was actually really difficult, but then also really useful because then as a nutritionist, I know that food can be very impactful. I know that food can help, and we can tweak and we can help symptoms. But also I know that that's only one way of supporting your health. And there's loads of other ways of being able to support your health. How's your mental health right now? Double checking on that. Is there something you can do? Obviously, if you're in a financial situation, is there something you can do that is free? I'm not saying go out and have a walk and it will cure your depression because that's annoying and not true. But is there something else that you can do to honour your mental health in whatever way that you feel is useful to you? Is there something that you can do if you're sleeping? How is your sleep right now? Is that something you can change? Can you have a look at the hours that you're doing? Can you go to bed earlier? How's your sleep setup? These are things that we can stack. And so I say to people, okay, nutrition may not be available to you right now. And that's okay. We've been told in diet culture and, in the very kind of Western white world that we live in, that nutrition is so important. It's been sold to us again and again. Capitalism is like, you must do this diet. You must eat this way. You have to have this supplement. Spend more money on this nutrition, this. You don't need to do all of that. Go, okay, nutrition. I'm just going to move down my priority list. Hopefully temporarily. We'll see. But I'm going to move something else up. And then when you start thinking about it in that way, you still feel as if you're honouring yourself and you're honouring your body. and you still feel as if you're supporting your health in one way or another, whatever your health looks like to you. And I think that's the wider conversation with intuitive eating. So that's kind of where my brain went. My brain went from, oh God, maybe it's not accessible. That feels really icky to me. I really don't like that. It doesn't feel very accessible. And then sitting in that suck for a while, and then moving on to the conversation of, but actually it's not just about intuitive eating. It's thinking about the wider person and how we can communicate that forwards. Like, okay, you don't have much money now. You can still be an intuitive eater because you're still recognizing this. You're still knowing this. You've got that tool that you can pick up when you need to. Let's see what else you can do with your health to stack it.
I love this so much, Jeanette. I love this idea of health stacking as a tool, because I imagine you feel the same way in your coaching. Because I feel like so much of my role as a coach, whether I'm doing leadership coaching or writing coaching or, fat liberation coaching, whatever it is, it's when people come to us and they're stuck, they feel like there's nowhere to turn, there are no options. And that's often when they want to get some support. And what you've done with the health stacking tool is you're actually returning them back to a place of choice and hope. That is brilliant, because when we can shift that energy for people, and it's not like, I love how you said, why have I never thought of this before? I loved how you said, I just wanted to underscore it. Just because I can't intuitively eat in this moment, it does not mean that my intuitive eating card is revoked. I still am an intuitive eater because that is a skill. That is a way I live. It is a way I be. And whether I'm doing it or not, that can't be taken away. That's also beautiful and hugely
it's so integral.
Yeah.
Because we can be caught in diet mentality snatches us back sometimes. And what I find with people who go into intuitive eating, they're waiting for their certificates. So they obviously know they're not going to get them, but they're waiting for some kind of big change, which we're so used to. You start a diet, you step on the scales. That first week, you've lost loads of weight. It's been, oh, isn't this amazing? And then you chug along and you get your little certificates and your stickers, or there's all this celebration and stuff. And with intuitive eating, you don't get that. It's very gentle. It's supposed to be a long and a slow change. There's no certificates, but there's a lot of self-healing and self-knowledge. And that doesn't get lost when you have moments, and it's going to happen. Our lives are not perfect. Our lives is not set up the way that capitalism wants our lives to be set up with, and white supremacy wants our lives to be set up with. We're told all these messages of how our lives are supposed to look and how we're supposed to act as people, so many complicated messages. And diet culture slips in all these messages of doing this, and you end up falling off the bandwagon and trying another diet, and then falling off the bandwagon, and then trying another thing, which is exhausting in itself to keep on doing that. And that's not intuitive eating. It's going, okay. Sometimes it's even for me, I'd have moments where I've just been oh God, I haven't even checked in my body for a few weeks. Oh, what is going on in there?
Hello, buddy. How are you?
And that doesn't stop me from being an intuitive eater. It's just meant that life has got in the way, and that is just natural, and that's okay. And this is where self-compassion comes in, when you can step back and go, okay, that's normal. It's fine. This isn't something that we achieve to be an intuitive eater. It's a tool. It's a tool that we're using as we go through our life that helps us.
Yeah. And I also I tend to think of it as a tool that has now become kind of like my soft landing place, my default place. And I get kicked out of it all the time. If I'm stressed or really busy, or oh my gosh, health stuff, or I fight with my partner or whatever, anything that happens in life can throw me. But it's where I come back to. When I come back to myself, I can come back to that place. And it's not like it gets taken away or disappears. So thank you for sharing that. Because when I'd never thought of it that way. And I was like, oh my God, I feel the truth of that. And the habit stacking that we can access, choose, reprioritize, the flexibility with that is brilliant. We can reprioritize depending on what's going on in our lives, and what we also have control over. Because there are things we don't have control over. So why do we like try to fight so hard against it? And then we just, I'll speak for myself. If I feel like I have no control, I'm like, fuck it, I give up, but what's actually true is I still have lots of choice. I just can't see it in the moment. So this is why I love this idea of the habit stack. Like I'm literally in my mind, or this is how geeky I am, Jeanette. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to hang up. I'm going to get out my Post-it notes and I'm going to like habit stack. I'm going to do a little habit stack like diagram for myself. And I'm going to put it on my desk and I'm going to like check in on it every week and be like, is this still the right order? Do I need to switch something? Because I think like having those reminders is so important for us to like give ourselves that compassion, to give ourselves that grace. And there's a real honesty to what you're saying. It's like, hey, I'm going to look honestly at my life right now. This is a bizarre week. I have all these things going on. Okay. So, maybe this week I really focus on prioritizing my sleep, and that's okay.
And you're still supporting your health.
Yes. Yeah. Whole health, like fully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of way of thinking as well really helps. Some people who are neurodivergent, as well as people who maybe in bodies that can't move for whatever reason, because, we've spoken a lot about like food, exercise is part of movement, is part of intuitive eating as well. And being able to, most dieters have a really poor relationship with movement and exercise because of that all or nothing and that punishment that comes with that and stuff. But also, it's being able to go, okay, especially like when I'm working with people who are in fat bodies and doing intuitive eating, exercise and movement is something that we could spend weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks exploring. And actually being able to give someone permission not to exercise. It's okay. It's okay not to exercise. And then not just to say it like that and end it, because that's really loaded. That feels really, really difficult when you're in a fat body that's been told you must be in a small body. And the way you get into that small body is so simple. It's so easy to do. All you've got to do is just eat a few more calories and burn some more. So you just got to go and hit the gym. Telling a fat person to release that is hard. It's not going to release it like at all. I think it feels very horrible to someone who's in a fat body to say to them, just don't bother with exercising, as if it's just as easy to release those thoughts. Whereas if you say to a fat person, okay, we need to movement and exercise to a different place right now, and we can come back to that. But at the moment, it's not going to serve you to do that movement and exercise. That's, put that to one side. But if we have a look at health stacking and being able to explain health stacking to someone and going, okay, you may not be moving, you may not be exercising, but also let's have you look at your health by zooming out, by have a look at that and being able to stack those things. And then also reminding that fat bodies move daily anyway. Just moving your arms around, that's movement. Loading the dishwasher, that's movement. That's all stuff that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Like I constantly move when I'm sitting down. Like you won't know that my foot's been tapping the whole time, but that's movement. Like that happens all the time. But then also when we're talking about, our fattest bodies, infinity fat bodies, and sometimes like super fat bodies where they feel like they don't have as much mobility, to be able to say to them, just, in this moment right now, it's okay not to have that exercise. And, because that's a massive worry, this correlation that people have in their mind, or no, not this correlation, this connection in this mind that comes from that correlation of like health and weight. And, you're trying to separate that whilst you're doing all of this work as well. And being able to give someone permission to not exercise and not to worry about that exercise, to give them that headspace, but then also to say to them, but there's other ways to be able to support your health. there's other things you can be doing right now, which doesn't feel as kind of worrying and anxiety driven, and that kind of message of just stop exercising can put some people in a complete tailspin.
Oh, for sure. Well, and we know, if we're living in survival mode, crisis mode, stressed all the time, no amount of exercise is going to help us. And so we're impacting our health. So even just the permission to shift our beliefs, to not have to exercise right now, or to change. For me, when I again, it's, I feel like I need a meme. It was like, I was this days old when I first heard that, oh yeah, movement can be loading, unloading the dishwasher, standing, washing the dishes, walking upstairs. And that that allowed me to let go of this little voice in the back of my mind about how much movement did you do today? Did you do something? And it's like, yeah, my office is on the 3rd floor. I walked up and down the stairs at least 20 times, 2 stories. Like, okay, I've climbed some level of stories of building, and like, I think that also has huge health. We know that has huge health benefits. If we're not feeling shame and stress, that does more for us. Yeah.
And there's socializing on the list for health as well. People, when you talk through actually the list of health promoting behaviors, people don't, there's so much we can do, and literally being able, which is also why when the whole world locked down during COVID, our collective health was impacted because we couldn't socialize with people. And that drove our stress up higher, including like the fear of COVID and the different world we were living in, that drove our stress up higher as well, which is actually really interesting. They've been doing research into diabetes, because there's been more people who have actually been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes following COVID. And they're thinking that, and I'm just adding this because it's just a nice little bit of information, that that actually stress and trauma can impact your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So it's not just sugar and being fat.
Well, and we know diabetes doesn't cause fatness. Like people, it's like insulin resistance, which is caused by the stuff going on in your body. Like it's just, there's so much. I love this idea of bringing in all these health promoting behaviors. And like, I can imagine you going through it with clients and being like, okay, here's a big long list. What's your stack? It's like, because you always hear the term tech stack, which is like, here are the technologies that a particular organization or company uses to get their business done. So they literally will do it as a stack. Like, oh, well, our email client is like Google, and then our database is, our CRM is like this one, and this one, and they just literally stack the technology. So this idea of like a health stack is just so delightful to me.
And it's kind of important to bring in, like, when I find it like sleep is quite interesting as well, because obviously like so many things can impact sleep. So,
as a 40-something-year-old woman, who's on hormones for endometriosis, let me just tell you.
Exactly. And actually, when I'm speaking to a person who is either perimenopause or menopause, and we're talking about health stacking, my first thing will be, okay, so sleep is going to be low down on the list, because I'm guessing you're not getting too much of that. But also, it's not something you can control as well. It's not like you can just say to yourself, oh, well, actually, I'm just going to have a good night's sleep tonight. Like, that doesn't happen, same as someone who, I've got a 1-year-old right now, who may sleep, who may not sleep. I can't just ignore him. So, there are, all of these kind of things is thinking about how these behaviors and these health promoting behaviors fit into your life, your own personal life. And if it's something you can't change, that's okay. That just goes down at the moment, and something else you can change or you can focus on just creeps on its way up. And that's okay. And it's going to change. throughout your life, things that, one day you'll be able to sleep through the night again and your hormones will hopefully settle down, and then your sleep can come back up and creep back up in priority, and then something else will creep down for another reason. It's supposed to change, like your body's supposed to change.
Right. And I think that's the beauty of this. This tool is the flexibility of it, because there is no flexibility in diet culture. It's like, you must be thin. That's it. There is no flexibility, and you must be as thin as possible. Like through any means possible, as thin as possible. There's no flexibility. So we've talked about, I just want to because again, I'm just imagining people maybe wanting to get out their own Post-it notes and do a little health stack. So we talked about sleep. We've talked about intuitive eating. We've talked about movement. We've talked about social, connection. And for me, there's so much research around belonging. So it's like that feeling of being with people who create that sense of belonging within you, people who really know you and who you really know. I have 2 people, really. So it doesn't need to, just anyone listening, if you're feeling like, I don't have those people, it doesn't have to be 30. It can be
quality over quantity.
Quality over quantity. Thank you. Yeah. So what other ones are there, Jeanette, that people could be thinking about in terms of their health stack?
Socializing, we said, sleep, mental health. Stress.
Oh, mental health's a big one. Yeah.
And stress. And I tend to pull those apart as well.
Say more about why you pull them apart.
Because you can be fine with your mental health, but be stressed as hell. But you can have the both of them together. So I think it's important to talk about them individually, and also being able to pull them apart separately allows you to stack them as well separately. And sometimes you just know that your mental health can't be your priority, but for some reason, you can try and do something to reduce the amount of stress that you have. I mean, we know that, in the UK, it's so difficult to get counselling on the NHS. So you have to go and do that privately.
Accessibility again.
Accessibility. And there are loads of people who can't afford to have therapy, which is what they actually need to help support their mental health healing, whatever that looks like for them, and to support them. But in their day-to-day lives, they may be able to help themselves in some way to even minimize or coping mechanisms with the stress, and being able to kind of okay, so mental health, I'm going to have to put down the priority list because I want to get a therapist, and I might be able to get one soon. It depends on money. But for now, I can think about those daily things to help my stress. Being able to do those kinds of things can really help. And also it makes us feel like we're doing something.
Yes. Again, return to choice, that we can do something. Yeah. Yeah.
Because we've been told, so once again, that with ableism and healthism and all these things, we've been told that our health is our individual responsibility. If I fell ill tomorrow with something, it's probably because I'm fat and I've done all the wrong things in my life.
And you chose it and you did it to yourself and you must be punished. Yes.
Ate and didn't do everything, and it was my fault entirely. I should have once again hit the gym and ate like lettuce leaves and something, slim fast again. But the reality is that we know it's not an individual responsibility. It's a far wider, far huger picture, which is another whole podcast in itself of what goes behind, actually really behind health. A really good podcast actually to listen to that just literally pings up into mind. It's the second series, you probably listened to it anyway, the second series of Asher's podcast, The Fat Doctor. That one delves into a lot about health and what goes on with health, the wider picture of health that diet culture doesn't actually tell you.
So we listed out a whole bunch of these health promoting behaviors that people can think about, what is within their sphere of influence, and if anyone needs it, to have permission to move things around depending on the week, the month, what's happening in your life. That it's like this loosening of rigidity, which of course is what diet culture is founded on, because the rigidity is impossible. So therefore, buy this product and you'll get there. So you can just see where it's also diabolically connected. All right. So, Jeanette, that brings us to joy. I mean, you're wearing yellow. You feel very joyful. What is your relationship to joy? How do you, where does, actually, you know what? Does joy fit on one of the health stacking behaviors? I want joy on my stack.
Why not?
Right? Joy, delight, pleasure.
Yeah.
Those are health promoting behaviors. Okay, I'm putting those on my stack.
I think that needs to go on there. That needs to go on there.
So what's your joy look like? How do you choose joy?
Well, joy for me today was, and I needed a joyful day today. And this has also been joyful. So today's been a day full of joy. Today was me eventually getting the kids dressed and out the house. All three of them. And I took them to, I know this sounds really odd for people who have more than one, oh no, any child. I took them to the supermarket and I love it. Their little curious faces about food and looking and being like, what's this, mummy? And can we try this, please? And being able to, I think from someone looking in, it was chaos. Mummy. But also at the same time, I really love kind of being able to kind of be like, oh yeah, this is really interesting. Also being like, we'll put that down for another day, but we can get some of these if you like. So that filled me with joy. And then we went to a park and it hailed whilst we were in the play park. It hailed and you would think that like the rest of the park cleared out. And we just stayed. And the kids were so excited. There was hail. It wasn't so bad that it wasn't hurting their skin or anything, but they were just fascinated by the hail and watching the bits of hail kind of bounce off the ground and make it turn a little bit white. And just having that kind of day with them was just really, really, really lovely. I really enjoyed it. That's joy for me.
Oh, how old are your kids? You said you have a 1-year-old?
Yeah, got a 1-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old.
Oh, wow. That is busy and delightful. Like all those, that just questioning, interacting, being in the world at that age. Oh, that's beautiful.
They've got such little curious minds and I love that so much. So I'm just allowing that to happen. I want them to question things. I want them to have that critical thought and be wanting to know more about the world around them. So, and that brings me joy to be able to do that with them, as well as obviously, I mean, I think sometimes I can fall very hard. I think a lot of other parents can probably resonate. I fall quite hard into just being a mum sometimes. So also the things that bring me joy is getting my bum out and having photos taken of it.
Yeah. I love that we're ending with bums.
Yay!
Amazing. Oh, Jeanette, this has been so wonderful. It's so great to chat with you and get to know you better. And I've loved this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Before we go, I'd like to read a poem because poetry can reach our hearts in a different way. Poems can have us feel in a different way. And that's what this podcast is all about. Expanding our hearts, deepening our empathy, and inviting in joy. So each week, you get a new poem. The poem I chose for my conversation with Jeanette feels whimsical and yet also has great depth. And I feel the same way about my conversation with Jeanette. So here is the poem called How to Hold the Heavy Weight of the Now by Dana Levin. She said, "You just make this gesture with your body," and opened her arms as if she could barely fit them around an enormous ball. "Make that shape again," she said, and so I did. "Now let it change," she said, and I did. Slowly closing the space between my arms, fingertips converging until they touched. I watched my hands turn together, align pinky side to pinky side. I watched my palms open, pushing gently forward, leading my body forward. I watched them let a bird go. I watched my hands make an offering. Thank you for joining me today. My hope is that you're feeling a little less alone and a little more seen. So until the next episode, you can find me on Instagram at fatjoy.life, on YouTube at youtube.com/@fatjoy, and on Substack at fatjoy.substack.com. And please do check out the episode notes for how you can connect with my amazing guest and for the links to the poem. All right, lovely. I am sending you off with my best wishes for an abundantly Fat Joy day, and we'll talk again soon.